Hey there, travelers. Before we dive into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. Now let's begin our journey into the unknown. I stood at the crime scene tape, 40 miles outside Green Bay, watching forensic techs photograph the ruins. The November wind cut through my jacket, carrying that smell with it. My phone had woken me at 3:47 a.m. with Captain Busick's voice saying this one was strange. 20 years as a detective taught me that strange meant complicated, and complicated meant sleepless nights piecing together evidence that didn't want to fit. Officer Henri Levesque met me at the perimeter, his young face pale under the floodlights. Detective O'Brien, 5 victims. Harold Holt, owner of the property, his wife Linda, their son Eric, plus 2 unidentified. Fire marshal confirms arson. Basement origin, accelerant used throughout. Suspect: David Brody. We found him half a mile down the road, covered in ash, just standing there. Didn't run when we approached. Didn't resist. Henri shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Sir, he's been saying things. About vampires, time travel. He's calm about it, too calm. Like he's filing a report. Great. A delusional killer. Just what we needed on a freezing November morning. The fire marshal showed me the basement where they'd found the bodies. Even through the destruction, the pattern was clear. 5 bodies positioned in a perfect circle, symbols carved into the concrete floor. Ritual arrangement. Someone had taken their time. Bodies were already dead when the fire started, the marshal said. No defensive postures, no signs they tried to escape. They were placed here post-mortem. I documented everything with my phone camera, trying to ignore the wrongness that pressed against my instincts. Something about this scene didn't fit standard homicide patterns. Dr. Samara Domus arrived 30 minutes later. I'd worked with her on dozens of cases. She was methodical, unshakable, brilliant. But after examining the bodies, she pulled me aside with confusion written across her face. Daniel. She used my first name, something she only did when a case genuinely bothered her. They're completely exsanguinated. No blood in the tissue, no pooling, nothing. These people were drained before death. Disease? Toxin? I don't know, but there's more. The bone density is significantly elevated, 40% higher than normal, and the canines show recent structural changes, like the bone was actively remodeling. She met my eyes. I've never seen anything like this. It's as if something was transforming them. The word hung between us. Transforming. Henri's earlier words echoed in my mind. He keeps talking about vampires. I pushed the thought away. There had to be a rational explanation. There was always a rational explanation. Back at Green Bay PD, I studied David Brody through the one-way glass before entering interrogation room 2. Early 30s, lean build, ash-smudged face. But it was his posture that unsettled me. Completely relaxed, hands flat on the table, no nervous movements. Most suspects fidgeted. Their bodies betrayed anxiety even when they tried to maintain composure. Brody sat perfectly still, like he was waiting for a scheduled appointment. I entered the room and laid crime scene photos on the table between us. Mr. Brody, I'm Detective Daniel O'Brien. You've been read your rights? I have. His voice was educated, measured, rational. 5 people are dead. You were found at the scene. Want to explain that? I killed an alpha vampire, he said, matter of fact as if reporting the weather. Harold Holt. He'd been transformed 3 days prior, was creating spawn. When I terminated him with silver core rounds through the heart and decapitation, the spawn combusted. Standard physiological response. The fire was collateral damage. I'd interrogated plenty of delusional killers. They usually kept their fantasies vague, shifting details to maintain the narrative. Brody spoke with military precision, like he was following a manual. Vampires, I said flatly. Yes. Harold had already turned his wife, son, and 2 drifters he'd lured to the property. The spawn die when their alpha dies. It's the only way to fight them effectively. Kill the alpha, eliminate the entire bloodline. He held my gaze. You examined the bodies. Dr. Domus found complete exsanguination, elevated bone density, elongated canines showing active remodeling. I know she did, because those are standard markers of vampire transformation. The hair on my neck stood up. How could he know Samara's findings? Mr. Brody, where are you from? Green Bay, born 2061 at Aurora Medical Center. He watched my expression carefully. I'm from 66 years in the future, detective. The year 2091. I came back to hunt alphas before they can build their armies. Time travel. One way, one-time trip. The technology allows 24 hours in the past. Then the temporal displacement collapses and pulls you back. Can only make the journey once. The process permanently alters your quantum signature. He leaned forward slightly. Tonight at 11:47 p.m., I'll vanish from whatever cell you're holding me in. You'll find a circular ash mark where I stood, roughly 3 feet in diameter. Your officer will report seeing a flash of white light, and you'll have no rational explanation. Something in his certainty was more disturbing than the claim itself. He wasn't hoping or believing. He was stating a future fact with absolute confidence. Tell me about these vampires, I said, deciding to let him talk. In my timeline, approximately 2 million humans survive. We live underground, in constant motion, hiding from them. The surface belongs to the alphas and their spawn. But more specifically, it belongs to the primordial. The primordial? For the first time, his composure cracked. Fear flickered across his face. 5 meters tall. Bat wings with a 15-meter span. Humanoid structure but wrong. Elongated limbs, too many joints. Its face looks almost human. Beautiful, even. That's the worst part, detective. It looks like an angel until it opens its mouth and you see what's underneath. He described it with the detail of someone who'd witnessed it firsthand, not someone constructing a fantasy. The primordial creates the alphas, Brody continued. They're extensions of its will, nodes in a telepathic network. Each alpha spawns mindless servants that hunt and feed. The alphas themselves are intelligent, strategic, generals in the primordial's army. When you kill an alpha, all its spawn combust instantly. That's why Harold's family died when I terminated him. And when does this start? In your timeline? November 15th, 2025, 2 weeks from now. He spoke each word clearly, deliberately. Seattle, Washington. Michael Slowick, 34-year-old accountant, transforms at 2:17 a.m., creates his first spawn by November 18th, establishes a nest in the basement of an apartment building at 2847 Pine Street. 23 victims in the first week. The specificity was chilling. Names, times, addresses, casualty counts. By 2026, the primordial makes its first appearance, Brody said. By 2045, after a 36-hour solar eclipse, billions die. By 2091, we're nearly extinct. Scattered thousands living in tunnels, waiting for the end. I studied him. No dilated pupils, no tremors, no signs of substance abuse or mental deterioration. Just calm, rational certainty about an impossible story. Why tell me this? Because I left you something. A journal. Complete timeline from 2025 to 2091. Every major event, every alpha emergence, tactical protocols for identification and termination. It's hidden in the old Paulson grain silo, northeast corner of the storage floor, metal box buried under loose grain. And why would I believe any of this? You shouldn't. Not yet. He held my gaze. But tonight, when I vanish from a locked cell with no possible explanation, you'll remember this conversation, and you'll wonder if maybe, just maybe, I was telling the truth. Then you'll go find that journal, because you're a detective. You follow evidence, even when it leads somewhere impossible. The confidence in his voice made my skin crawl. I spent the afternoon cross-referencing his claims against our databases. Unsolved cases over the past year showed disturbing patterns. Hikers found in remote areas, drained of blood, authorities blaming animal attacks. A family in Appleton had vanished in August, their home abandoned but showing signs of struggle. 2 drifters disappeared near Highway 41 in September. Never found. Coincidences. Had to be coincidences. My phone rang. Samara. Daniel. Preliminary results are back. The genetic sequencing shows anomalies I can't explain. The cellular structure is wrong. Like their DNA was being actively rewritten. The transformation would have taken days, maybe a week at most. Brody's words echoed. Harold had been transformed 3 days ago. Could this be a disease? I asked, knowing the answer. If it is, it's nothing in our databases. Nothing I've ever seen. Her voice carried genuine confusion. Daniel, what kind of case is this? I didn't have an answer. At 11:30 p.m., I stood in the observation room with Captain Busick and Officer Levesque, watching the holding cell through security monitors. Brody sat on the concrete bench, eyes closed, breathing steady. We'd moved him there 2 hours ago. This is absurd, Busick muttered, coffee cup in hand. Standing here waiting for a magic trick. But he didn't leave. None of us did. 11:45 p.m. Brody stood and moved to the center of the cell. He looked directly at the camera, as if he could see us watching. What's he doing? Levesque whispered. 11:47 p.m. Every light in the building died, in the complete darkness for 3 heartbeats. When the lights flickered back on, the cell was empty. We stood frozen, staring at the monitor. Then Levesque bolted down the hallway and I followed, my pulse hammering. The cell door was still locked. I checked the mechanism myself 3 times. Busick radioed for a building-wide search. Inside the cell, where Brody had been standing, was a perfect circle of ash. 3 feet in diameter, edges sharp and precise as if drawn with a compass. The concrete was scorched but structurally undamaged. The smell of ozone hung in the air. No footprints leading away. No hidden exits. Just the ash circle and the impossible absence of a man who'd been locked in seconds ago. I saw it, Levesque said from the doorway, his voice shaking. I was in the hallway when it happened. Flash of white light, so bright I couldn't look at it. Then nothing. He was just gone. People don't vanish, Busick said, but his voice carried no conviction. I knelt beside the ash, examining the pattern. My training demanded rational explanation. Trapdoor, Confederate, elaborate trick. But the evidence said otherwise. The evidence said David Brody had told the truth about this at least. Which meant maybe he'd told the truth about everything else. I left the station at 2 a.m., drove through empty streets. Not toward home, toward the Paulson grain silo. The abandoned structure rose against the November sky, a decaying remnant of Green Bay's past. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls. I grabbed my flashlight and approached cautiously. The storage floor was exactly as Brody described, vast and filled with rotting grain. I made my way to the northeast corner, flashlight beam cutting through darkness. There, partially buried, I found it. Military-grade metal box, sealed tight. Inside was a leather-bound journal. My hands trembled as I lifted it out. Well-maintained leather, strong binding. I opened to the first page. My name is David Brody. I write this on November 2nd, 2091. Humanity has 83 days left. If you're reading this, you have a chance to change everything. This is the timeline of our extinction. I stood in that dark silo, holding a journal from a man who'd vanished from a locked cell, and felt my understanding of reality fracture. The second page contained an entry. November 15th, 2025, Seattle, Washington. Michael Slowick, 34, accountant. Alpha emergence at 2:17 a.m. First spawn created by November 18th. Initial nest established in basement of apartment building at 2847 Pine Street. Estimated 23 victims in first week. I checked my phone. November 1st, 2025. 2 weeks. 2 weeks until I'd know if David Brody had been a delusional killer or a time traveler trying to save humanity. 2 weeks until Michael Slowick either transformed into something impossible or woke up for another ordinary Thursday. I tucked the journal under my arm and walked back to my car. The weight of 66 years of future horror pressed against my ribs. The November wind cut through my jacket, but I barely felt it. Because if this journal was real, if Brody had told the truth, then I was holding humanity's only warning. And I had 2 weeks to decide what to do about it. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't sleep. The journal sat on my kitchen table. Leather cover worn smooth by hands that wouldn't exist for another 66 years. I made coffee at 3 a.m. and opened it again, this time starting from the beginning with the methodical attention I'd give any case file. Because that's what this was, I told myself. A case. Evidence to be examined, cross-referenced, verified or dismissed. The fact that the evidence claimed to be from the future was just another variable to account for. David Brody's handwriting was precise, almost mechanical. Military training, probably. Each entry was dated, locations specified, casualty numbers recorded. No emotional flourishes, no dramatic language. Just facts presented with clinical detachment. I pulled out my notebook and started taking notes, treating the journal like witness testimony. If Brody was delusional, his delusion would show inconsistencies. If he was telling the truth, well, I'd cross that bridge when I came to it. The journal began with a simple statement. Timeline constructed from personal experience, military records, and survivor testimonies. Dates are approximate in early stages due to information suppression and communications breakdown. Casualty numbers are estimates based on pre-collapse census data and post-collapse surveys. Professional. Almost academic. Not the writing of someone lost in fantasy. I turned to the first detailed entry. November 15th, 2025. Seattle, Washington. Michael Slowick, 34, accountant at Brenner & Associates. Lived alone, apartment 4B at 2847 Pine Street. No prior criminal record, no mental health issues, no indication of what was coming. Transformation occurred at 2:17 a.m. Neighbors reported hearing screams, but by the time police arrived at 2:43 a.m., Slowick had fled. First spawn created November 18th, Jennifer Mills, 29, jogger attacked in Discovery Park. Mills created 2 more spawn before Slowick's nest was discovered. Police raid, November 21st, resulted in 8 officer fatalities. Slowick escaped. Nest relocated to Industrial District underground parking structure beneath abandoned factory on Harbor Avenue. Pattern established. Nocturnal hunting. Victim selection based on isolation and opportunity. Rapid spawn creation. By November 30th, Seattle had 23 confirmed vampire attacks, 7 missing persons, and a media blackout. Federal government assumed control of information flow. Public told it was a gang-related violence surge. I stopped reading and pulled up my laptop, searching for Michael Slowick. Found him immediately. Accountant in Seattle, exactly as described. LinkedIn profile showed him at Brenner & Associates. His apartment building existed at that address. Coincidence, I told myself. Publicly available information. But the detail about his apartment number, 4B, that wasn't on any public record I could find. I made a note to verify that later. I kept reading. December 2025, outbreak expansion. Second alpha emergence, Portland, Oregon. Rebecca Penn, 31, elementary school teacher. Transformation. December 8th. Different pattern from Slowick. Penn targeted children initially, creating spawn from students. School closed December 12th after 4 children disappeared. Penn's nest discovered in school basement December 19th. 7 spawn destroyed, but Penn escaped. Third alpha emergence, San Francisco, California. Vincent Bosch, 47, tech entrepreneur. Transformation, December 23rd. Bosch demonstrated higher intelligence than previous alphas, suggesting primordial selection criteria included cognitive capacity. Created network of spawn within his company first, using professional relationships to mask disappearances. Nest remained undetected until January 2026. I felt coldness spreading through my chest. 3 names, 3 cities, 3 detailed accounts. I looked up Rebecca Penn, elementary school teacher in Portland. Exactly as stated. Vincent Bosch, tech CEO in San Francisco, company called Nexus Innovations. All real people. All alive right now. The rational part of my brain scrambled for explanations. Brody had researched random people, constructed an elaborate fantasy around them. But why? What was the end game? He was dead or returned to his own time. He'd never see whether I believed him or not. Unless he genuinely wanted to warn someone. Unless this was real. I pushed the thought away and continued reading. January 2026. Federal response. Government established Special Containment Division, SCD, under Homeland Security. Initial response focused on cover-up rather than containment. Media blackout expanded, social media monitoring implemented, witnesses intimidated or discredited. Problem: SCD didn't understand what they were fighting. Treated vampire phenomenon as biological threat. Deployed hazmat protocols and quarantine procedures. Completely ineffective. Alphas are not diseased humans. They're transformed beings operating under primordial control. By end of January 4th. Alphas active. Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Estimated 60+ spawn. Federal task force created, but lacking critical information. Killing spawn is useless. Only terminating alphas eliminates their bloodlines. First successful alpha termination, January 28th, Portland. Rebecca Penn tracked to nest beneath defunct theater. Local SWAT team, unaware of proper protocol, used incendiary rounds. Penn's heart destroyed, head severed in explosion. All 12 of her spawn combusted simultaneously across Portland. Authorities attributed spontaneous human combustion to gas leak explosions. Pattern noted, but not understood. I paused, rereading that section. The detail about Portland SWAT accidentally discovering the kill method. That was specific. Verifiable, if it happened. I made another note. The journal continued with increasing urgency. February-March 2026. Los Angeles crisis. Angela Ortiz, 38, ER physician. Transformation. February 4th. Fourth confirmed alpha. Ortiz's medical knowledge made her exceptionally dangerous. She understood human vulnerability intimately. Created spawn from hospital patients, staff, visitors. By February 20th, UCLA Medical Center was compromised. Federal quarantine established. Ortiz demonstrated new capability. Spawn control at distance. Previous alphas required proximity to their spawn. Ortiz directed her creations from miles away, suggesting primordial network had strengthened or evolved. March 2026. Federal government deployed military units to LA. Operation Sundown, attempt to eliminate all vampire entities in single coordinated strike. Complete failure. Military engaged spawn in daylight, but couldn't locate Ortiz. 43 soldiers killed when she led spawn through underground tunnels, attacked staging areas after dark. Ortiz eliminated March 18th by civilian militia. Group of former military personnel, having studied Portland incident, used silver core ammunition and focused on alpha rather than spawn. Ortiz's destruction resulted in combustion of 89 spawn across Los Angeles basin. Civilian militia arrested, held without trial. Their tactics later became foundation for organized vampire hunting. I was taking notes faster now, my detective training kicking in despite the impossibility of what I was reading. Patterns emerged. Alpha behavior, spawn creation methods, the critical importance of killing alphas rather than their servants. If this was fiction, it was remarkably consistent fiction. Every detail supported every other detail. No contradictions, no convenient gaps. April-May 2026, Chicago, and the 5th Alpha. James Witt, 42, military veteran, Army Ranger. Transformation, April 3rd, 5th Alpha, Chicago. Witt represented worst-case scenario. Alpha with military training and combat experience. Unlike previous alphas who created spawn randomly, Witt was strategic. Targeted other veterans, former military personnel, building an army rather than a mob. By April 30th, Witt controlled 34 spawn, all former soldiers. Coordinated attacks on police stations. Federal buildings, establishing territory in Chicago's South Side. SCD completely overwhelmed. May 2026. First organized resistance emerged. Coalition of police, military deserters, and armed civilians. Called themselves Daylight Runners. Operated during safe hours. Tracked alphas to their nests. Eliminated them before dark. Success rate, approximately 30%. Witt eliminated May 27th. Required coordinated assault by 40+ hunters. 12 human fatalities. But with Witt's destruction, all 34 military-trained spawn combusted. Chicago declared victory. False hope. 5 alphas eliminated, but dozens more emerging weekly. Pattern clear. Primordial was accelerating alpha creation. Selection criteria remained unknown. I stopped reading and rubbed my eyes. It was 5 a.m. My coffee had gone cold. Outside my kitchen window, Green Bay was still dark, stars visible in the clear November sky. 2 weeks from now, according to this journal, Michael Slowick would transform into something inhuman. 6 weeks after that, the world would realize vampires were real. By summer, civilization would be fighting for survival. I looked up each name as I read: Slowick, Penn, Bosch, Ortiz, Witt. All real people, all living ordinary lives right now. All completely unaware they were supposedly marked for transformation. The question I kept coming back to: how could Brody know these names? How could he know their professions, their cities, their ages? Unless he really was from the future. I shook my head and kept reading. June 2026, the Primordial's first appearance. The handwriting changed here. Still neat, still controlled, but faster. Heavier pressure on the pen. This entry was written by someone reliving trauma. June 14, 2026, Chicago, 8:47 p.m. I was 17 years old. Just finished junior year of high school. My family lived in Arlington Heights, northwest suburb. We thought we were safe from the vampire crisis downtown. The sky darkened. Not clouds. This was different. Unnatural. Temperature dropped 20 degrees in 5 minutes. Emergency broadcasts said stay indoors, lock doors and windows. My father, a police officer, knew something catastrophic was happening. Then we saw it. The Primordial appeared over the Chicago skyline at 9:03 p.m. 5 meters tall, humanoid shape but elongated. Wings, massive bat wings that blocked out stars when it flew. Face was beautiful and terrible. Human features but wrong proportions, too perfect to be real. When it opened its mouth, rows of teeth appeared where throat should be. It flew over the city for 47 minutes. Every alpha in Chicago, and there were dozens by then, fed their spawn human blood during that time. Thousands transformed simultaneously. Hospitals overwhelmed. Police stations overrun. Military units deployed but completely ineffective. The Primordial didn't attack directly. Didn't need to. Its presence was a signal, a command. Every alpha understood. Expand, feed, grow stronger. When it vanished at 9:50 p.m., Chicago had transformed from contested territory to vampire stronghold. My father died that night, killed defending our home from 3 spawn that broke through our doors. My mother and sister survived. Barely. June 15:30. Similar appearances reported worldwide. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Sao Paulo. The Primordial was announcing itself. 47 minutes each time. Always at night. Always with the same result. Massive spawn creation. Territorial expansion. Human casualties in the thousands. By end of June 2026, estimated 200 plus alphas worldwide. Spawn count unknown. Tens of thousands minimum. Government authority collapsed in major urban centers. Rural areas became refugee zones. The war had begun. I sat back, breathing harder than I should. Brody had been 17 when this happened. Watched his father die. The clinical detachment in earlier entries made sense now. This was someone who'd learned to document horror without feeling it, because feeling it would break him. If this was real. If any of this was real. I checked the time. 6 a.m. I needed to get to the station soon, file my report on Brody's disappearance, but I couldn't stop reading. July-December 2026, the First War. Humanity learned to fight. Slowly, desperately, but we learned. Key discoveries. Alphas must be killed for spawn to die. Killing spawn individually is waste of resources. Silver disrupts vampire physiology. Silver core ammunition most effective. Decapitation essential. Heart destruction alone insufficient for alpha termination. Daylight doesn't kill vampires, but causes extreme pain. They retreat underground during day. Alphas are intelligent and coordinate through primordial network. Treat them as military commanders, not mindless monsters. Organized resistance formed. Daylight runners evolved into Continental Defense Force, CDF. Military deserters, police, armed civilians, operated in cells, hunted alphas systematically. Success rate improved, 60% by December. But alpha creation rate exceeded elimination rate. For every alpha killed, 3 more emerged. December 2026 count. Approximately 400 alphas worldwide. Spawn count. Estimated 100,000 plus. Human population decrease. 2% globally. Concentrated in urban areas. My role. Joined youth militia in Chicago suburbs. Age 17. Trained in alpha identification and nest reconnaissance. Lost 2 friends in November ambush. Killed my first alpha in December. Nest in abandoned mall. Coordinated assault with 20 other hunters. 13 human casualties. Alpha terminated. 37 spawn, combusted. The entries became more tactical after this, less personal. Pages and pages of alpha locations, termination protocols, lessons learned. Brody had spent decades fighting these things. I flipped ahead looking for major events. 2027, 2030. Adaptation. 3 years of constant warfare. Humanity adapted. Safe zones established in rural areas, mountains, deserts, places where vampire nests couldn't easily hide. Underground cities constructed in some regions. Entire populations lived below ground where alphas couldn't mass attack. Daylight operations became standard. All critical activities conducted in daylight hours. Night belonged to them. Alpha hunting became professionalized. CDF grew to 50,000 trained hunters by 2030. Technology repurposed. Thermal imaging to detect nests, UV lighting for perimeter defense, ineffective as weapon but useful for detection, silver core ammunition mass-produced. Alpha characteristics better understood. Transformation is permanent. No cure exists. Alphas retain human intelligence and memory, but personality is overwritten by primordial influence. Alphas can communicate telepathically with primordial and each other. Coordination across distances confirmed. Average alpha creates 20-50 spawn before being terminated. Some create hundreds. Primordial selection criteria partially understood. Genetic markers, psychological profiles, geographic distribution, appears to choose individuals with leadership qualities, tactical thinking, or scientific knowledge. 2030 census. Human population decreased to 7.2 billion. 800 million casualties in 5 years. Alpha count, approximately 2,000 worldwide. Spawn count, estimated 500,000. The war had reached stalemate. We could kill alphas, but not fast enough. They could create spawn, but we could hunt them. Neither side could achieve decisive victory. I was annotating everything now, cross-referencing dates, looking for patterns. The journal read like a military history text, complete with strategic analysis and casualty reports. 2031 to 2040, the long fight. Decade of grinding warfare. No major advances, no breakthrough victories, just survival. Key events, 2032. CDF established forward operating bases near major vampire territories. Aggressive hunting strategy implemented. 2034. Attempted peace negotiation with alphas. Failed. Alphas cannot disobey primordial directives. 2036. Discovery of alpha breeding program. Some alphas attempting to create new alphas artificially. Failed experiments, but concerning development. 2038. Human population dropped below 7 billion. Birth rate declined sharply. Who wants to bring children into this world? 2040. I turned 31. 15 years of fighting. Made captain in CDF. Responsible for Midwest operations. 500 hunters under my command. Personal note. Met Elena in 2035. Another hunter. Survivor from Detroit. Married in 2037. Daughter Sarah, born 2039. This is why we fight. To give them a future. The journal entry included a small sketch in the margin. A woman's face, smiling. Sarah was written beneath it. The only personal touch in hundreds of pages of tactical documentation. 2041, 2044. The calm. 4 years of relative stability. Alpha creation rate slowed, unknown why. Primordial appeared only twice in this period. Brief sightings without major spawn surges. We dared to hope. Maybe we could win. Maybe the primordial was weakening, or losing interest, or whatever incomprehensible motivation drove it was shifting. Built up defenses, expanded safe zones, re-established some government functions. Global population stabilized around 6.8 billion. Alpha count actually decreased, 1,500 worldwide by 2044. Best hunters were terminating them faster than new ones emerged. I requested transfer to Alpha Research Division. Wanted to understand them better, find weaknesses. Studied transformed tissue, behavioral patterns, telepathic network characteristics. Made some progress, but Primordial's biology was fundamentally alien. Like trying to understand a radio by looking at a speaker. Sarah turned 5 in 2044. She learned to read. Elena and I talked about the future. Real future. Maybe life without constant fighting. Then came the eclipse. I turned the page and found the handwriting had changed again. Shakier now. The next entry was dated June 2045. June 2045. The eclipse. Astronomical anomaly. Solar eclipse lasting 36 hours. Scientists couldn't explain it. Physics didn't support eclipse of that duration. But it happened. June 20th, 2045. 6:00 a.m. Eclipse began. Total darkness. The primordial appeared immediately. Not just one appearance, it manifested in 12 locations simultaneously. New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, São Paulo, Lagos, Cairo, Mumbai, Sydney, Tokyo, Mexico City, Los Angeles. 12 instances of the same entity, all coordinating perfectly. For 36 hours, there was no daylight, no safety. Alphas and spawn emerged from every nest worldwide, attacked everything. No defensive perimeter held. No safe zone remained safe. By hour 12, global communications breaking down. Military units overwhelmed. CDF scattered. By hour 24, estimated 1 billion human casualties. Cities burning. Governments collapsed. Organized resistance fragmenting into scattered groups. Hour 36, eclipse ended. Primordial vanished. But damage was catastrophic. Personal note, Elena died hour 18. Atlanta overrun, our base compromised. She held position so others could evacuate. Sarah and I escaped. Elena didn't. Post-eclipse count, human population approximately 4.5 billion. 2 billion casualties in 36 hours. Alpha count, estimated 5,000. Spawn count, incalculable. Millions. Civilization effectively ended June 2045. What came after was just scattered survivors trying to outlast extinction. I had to stop reading. Put the journal down. Walked to my kitchen window, stared out at Green Bay waking up. Cars driving to work. People starting their days. Normal life. The journal described the end of that normal life in clinical detail. 2 billion people dead in a day and a half. David Brody's wife killed defending an evacuation. His daughter, Sarah, surviving into a world that was nothing but hiding and fighting. If this was true, if any of this was true. I made fresh coffee and sat back down. Had to finish reading. Had to see how it ended. 2046, 2089. Survival. 43 years of slow extinction. No major events, just grinding attrition. Humanity scattered into small groups, constantly moving, never safe. Key developments. Underground cities expanded. Some groups lived entire lives below ground. Alpha hunting continued but less organized. Cell-based tactics, small teams. Human population continued declining. 4 billion by 2050, 3 billion by 2060, 2 billion by 2070. Technology regressed. Can't maintain infrastructure when constantly fleeing. Lost satellite communications, internet, most electrical grids. Sarah grew up in this world. Became hunter at age 15. One of the best. Made me proud and broke my heart. 2075. Sarah married Marco Dolby, another hunter. I got to walk her down an aisle in an underground shelter, 50 people in attendance, candles for lighting. Most beautiful day in decades of darkness. 2077. Grandson born. Named him David, after my father. Hoped he'd live in better world than we gave him. 2080s. Primordial appeared sporadically, always brief. Maintaining its army but not expanding aggressively. We were no longer threat, just remnants waiting to be finished off. 2089. Discovery that changed everything. Dr. Raymond Newman, physicist who'd been working on theoretical research, announced breakthrough. Time travel was possible. Limited application. Enormous energy requirement, but possible. Theory. Send hunters back to eliminate alphas before they build armies. Change the timeline. Prevent the catastrophe. Problem. Technology allowed only one person to travel. Only one time per person. Only 24 hours in the past before automatic return. And power requirements were massive. Needed nuclear reactors to generate enough energy. 2090. Project Kronos. Construction of time travel facility began January 2090. Located in what remained of Green Bay. Ironic, my home city. Used 3 nuclear reactors to power the temporal displacement device. Volunteer criteria. Experienced alpha hunters with knowledge of early outbreak patterns. People willing to never return, because if the mission succeeded, the timeline they came from would cease to exist. I volunteered immediately. Sarah did too. Marco. Dozens of others. We'd lived through hell for 60 years. Chance to prevent it? Even knowing we'd be erased from existence? Worth it. Colonel Lauren Kirk commanded project. Selected targets carefully. Early alphas whose elimination would cascade into major timeline changes. Harold Holt, who would become alpha in November 2025, was one of them. Small-time alpha only created 5 spawn, but his location and timing made him strategic target. I was assigned Holt termination. November 1st, 2025, 24-hour window, eliminate alpha before spawn creation. Training took 9 months. Studied 2025 technology, culture, language patterns. Had to pass for someone from that time period. Memorized journal contents. Everything I'd need to convince someone, if the chance arose. October 2090, ready to deploy. Said goodbye to Sarah, to Marco, to young David. Might never see them again, in fact, hoped I'd never see them again, because that would mean I'd succeeded, and they'd never experienced this timeline at all. November 1st, 2090, Mission Day. November 1st, 2090, Deployment Day. 0800 hours, final briefing. Review target information, confirm temporal coordinates. 0900 hours, last conversation with Sarah. She told me she was proud, told me to succeed, told me she loved me. 0930 hours, entered temporal chamber. Dr. Newman explained again, 24 hours in past, automatic return, one-way trip only. If I died in past, I just died. No backup plan. 1000 hours, activation. Sensation like falling through ice water. Then nothing. 1003 hours, subjective. Arrived November 1st, 2025, 10:03 a.m. Green Bay, Wisconsin. The world was clean. Buildings intact. People walking around unafraid. Sky was blue without smoke. I stood on a street corner and cried for 5 minutes. Then got to work. Located Harold Holt. Confirmed he was pre-transformation. Tracked him for 12 hours. Verified he was showing early signs. Heightened aggression, avoiding sunlight, unusual appetite. Waited until dark. Holt entered his basement. I followed. Found him mid-feed. Had already turned his family. Spawn were fresh, still partially human-looking. Termination protocol executed. Silver core rounds. Decapitation. Spawn combusted as expected. Fire spread faster than anticipated. Accelerant from transformation process. Building burned. Made it outside. Waited for authorities. Knew I'd be arrested. That was fine. Had 24 hours. Needed to leave journal where it would be found. Chose grain silo, place I remembered from childhood, stable location. Hid journal 2 Talas p.m. November 1st. Waited for police. Arrested at scene, brought to station. Interrogated by Detective Daniel O'Brien, name I'd researched. Good detective, good man. Told him everything. Gave him the journal location. Knew he wouldn't believe me yet. But when I vanished, he'd remember. He'd find the journal. He'd read it. And maybe, he'd act on it. November 1st to 2, 2091. Final entry. 0400 hours returned to 2091. Temporal displacement completed successfully. Briefed Colonel Kirk. Holt eliminated, journal placed. Detective O'Brien contact established. Mission success by all metrics. But we won't know if it worked. Can't know. If timeline changes, we'll cease to exist in our current form. The world we know will simply not have happened. Sarah asked me what I told the detective. Told her I gave him the truth, all of it. The timeline, the tactics, the horrors to come. Gave him the choice we never had. Preparation. Will he believe it? Will he act? Don't know. But I gave humanity a chance. That's all we can do. This is my final entry. Project Kronos continues. Other hunters deploying to other time periods, other targets. We're trying to cut the roots of the infection before it spreads. If you're reading this, Detective O'Brien, then you found the journal. You read this far. You know what's coming. Michael Slowick transforms in 2 weeks. That's your proof. Watch him. Document it. When it happens, you'll know everything in this journal is real. Then decide. Will you fight? Will you warn others? Will you prepare? Or will you let it happen? Let humanity stumble blind into extinction. The choice is yours now. The timeline is yours to change. Good luck, Detective. Humanity's counting on you. David Brody, November 2nd, 2091. I closed the journal and sat in silence as dawn light filled my kitchen. 2 weeks until Michael Slowick transformed. 2 weeks until I knew if David Brody had been insane or prophetic. 2 weeks to decide what to do with the most important case file I'd ever held. The weight of 66 years of future horror pressed down on my shoulders, and I had no idea what to do next. I called in sick to the station. First time in 3 years I'd used a sick day, and Captain Busick didn't question it. Maybe he heard something in my voice, the weight of impossible knowledge pressing down on every word. He told me to rest, said he'd handle the Brody disappearance report himself. Good. I needed time to process what I'd read. Time to decide if I was going to treat a leather journal as evidence or insanity. I spread everything across my dining room table, like I was building a caseboard. The journal sat in the center, surrounded by my notebook filled with cross-referenced names and dates. My laptop was open to multiple browser tabs. Michael Slowick's LinkedIn profile, Rebecca Penn's school district page, Vincent Bosch's company website, Angela Ortiz's hospital bio. All real people. All alive right now. All supposedly marked for transformation into something that would hunt and kill. I'd been a detective for 20 years. Built my career on evidence, logic, following facts wherever they led. But facts weren't supposed to lead to time travel and vampires. Facts were supposed to make sense within the boundaries of what was possible. The journal made sense, though. That was the problem that kept me awake. Every entry supported every other entry. The timeline was internally consistent across decades. The tactical information was detailed and practical, written by someone who'd clearly used these methods in the field. The personal notes, Brody's father dying in Chicago, his wife Elena killed defending an evacuation in Atlanta, his daughter Sarah growing up in underground shelters, those carried the unmistakable weight of genuine memory, not constructed fantasy. And then there was the disappearance, the ash circle in the cell, the flash of light Officer Levesque had witnessed. The impossible absence of a man from behind a locked door that I'd personally verified was secure. I rubbed my eyes and checked the date on my phone. November 2nd, 2025. 13 days until Michael Slowick supposedly transformed into the first alpha of this timeline. 13 days to decide what to do with information that could either save humanity or destroy my credibility forever. I could do nothing. File the journal as evidence of Brody's elaborate delusion. Write it up as the fantasy of a disturbed mind. Move on with my life. In 2 weeks, either Slowick would transform and prove the journal right, or he'd wake up for another normal day and prove it wrong. Either way, I'd have my answer without risking my career or reputation. But if the journal was right and I did nothing, 23 people would die in Seattle by the end of November. Hundreds more by December. Thousands by the new year. Millions by June when the primordial made its first appearance. Could I live with that? Could I ignore a warning just because it seemed impossible? I picked up my phone and called Dr. Samara Domus. Daniel? I thought you were taking a sick day. I am. This is personal. The Holt case. You said the genetic sequencing showed anomalies. Can you send me the full results? Silence on the other end. Then, carefully. Why? I'm following up on something. Call it professional curiosity. Daniel, you sound strange. Are you okay? No, I thought. I'm reading a journal from the future about vampire apocalypse and trying to decide if I'm losing my mind or if the world is about to end. I'm fine, I said. Just need to verify something. Can you send the results? I'll email them in an hour. I spent that hour researching the names from the future timeline. Colonel Lauren Kirk, Dr. Raymond Newman, Agent Nicole Frost, Lieutenant Marco Dolby. Nothing came up. Either they didn't exist yet, or they were ordinary people whose significance wouldn't emerge for decades. Sarah Brody, David's daughter, born 2039 according to the journal, obviously couldn't be verified either. My email pinged. Samara's report. I opened the attachment and started reading. Medical terminology filled the screen. Genetic markers that shouldn't exist. Cellular abnormalities that defied known biology. Protein structures that had no explanation in current science. Most of it was beyond my expertise, but Samara had included a summary in plain language. Victims show unprecedented genetic modification. DNA sequences include markers not present in baseline human genome. Cellular structure suggests active transformation process interrupted by death. Bone density increase of 43% over normal levels. Dental structure shows recent rapid growth in canine teeth. Impossible under normal physiological circumstances. Metabolic changes suggest shift toward nocturnal activity patterns. Conclusion. Unknown pathogen or environmental factor causing radical biological transformation. Recommend immediate CDC involvement and full epidemiological investigation. 43% bone density increase. The journal had said 40%. I opened the journal to the entry on vampire physiology, found the relevant passage. Bone density increased by approximately 40%. Check the dental structure of the bodies. You'll find elongated canines. Metabolic shift toward nocturnal patterns occurs within 72 hours of transformation initiation. Brody had known exactly what Samara would find, because he'd examined transformed bodies for decades, documented their characteristics with scientific precision, learned their weaknesses through brutal trial and error. My hands were shaking as I set down the report. I stared at the journal lying open on my table. This was real. Had to be real. No other explanation fit the evidence I was seeing. Which meant in 13 days, Michael Slowick, a normal accountant in Seattle who posted about football games and complained about traffic, would transform into something inhuman. And I was the only person in the world who knew it was coming. I made a decision that would change everything. I opened my laptop and started a new document. Began typing everything I knew. Organized it like a case file. Timeline of events, physical evidence, witness testimony, predictions with verifiable dates. Treated the journal as a primary source document. Cross-referenced every claim I could possibly verify against public records and databases. Took me 6 hours of solid work. By the time I finished, I had a 40-page report documenting everything from Brody's initial arrest to his impossible disappearance, to the journal's complete contents. I included photos of the ash circle, screenshots of the real people mentioned in the journal, excerpts from Samara's genetic analysis, my own annotations and observations. I saved 3 copies, one on my laptop, one on a USB drive I kept in my wallet, one printed and stored in a fireproof safe in my basement. If something happened to me, if I was wrong about all this and ended up committed or worse, the information would survive. Then I did something that probably crossed several legal and ethical lines. I started investigating Michael Slowick. Not officially. I had no jurisdiction in Seattle, no warrant, no legitimate reason to put surveillance on him. But if the journal was right, this man would kill 23 people by the end of November. I needed to know if there were warning signs, behavioral patterns I could recognize in future transformation targets. I found his address through property records. Apartment 4B at 2847 Pine Street, exactly as the journal stated. Found his work schedule through his company's website, his daily routines through careful analysis of his social media posts. His LinkedIn showed a completely ordinary career trajectory. Bachelor's degree in accounting, 5 years at Brenner & Associates, steady progression. His Facebook posts were painfully mundane. Seahawks games, articles about tax law changes, complaints about Seattle traffic and rain. By all accounts, Michael Slowick was aggressively, determinedly normal. Nothing in his digital footprint suggested he'd transform into a vampire in less than 2 weeks. But Harold Holt had probably seemed normal too, right up until the moment David Brody put silver bullets through his heart. I spent the next week in a strange limbo, maintaining normal appearances at work during the day, while obsessively monitoring the journal's predictions at night. Captain Busick had filed the Brody disappearance as unexplained phenomenon pending further investigation. The FBI had sent a forensics team to examine the ash circle, taken samples for analysis, interviewed everyone who'd been in the building that night. They'd left without any conclusions, just more questions. No one had a rational explanation for how a man vanished from a locked cell. I didn't tell anyone about the journal. Who would believe me? "Hey, Captain, I found a diary from the future that says vampires are real and we're all going to die." That was a guaranteed path to mandatory psychiatric evaluation and the end of my career. Instead, I researched. Spent every free moment verifying details from the journal, cross-referencing historical patterns, looking for any evidence that might support or contradict what I'd read. Found something deeply disturbing on day 5. Unsolved murders from 2023 and 2024 that matched the journal's description of the alpha testing phase. Bodies found drained of blood in remote areas, wounds inconsistent with known predators, authorities dismissing them as animal attacks. The journal mentioned this, the primordial experimenting, preparing its biology, testing its abilities before the main outbreak began. I mapped them carefully, using a detailed spreadsheet. 15 cases over 2 years, scattered across North America. No pattern the authorities had noticed, but I saw it now with the journal as a guide. The locations matched cities where early alphas would emerge. Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago. Each city had 1 or 2 unexplained deaths in the 2 years before an alpha appeared there. The primordial had been marking its targets, choosing its first alphas, preparing the ground. This wasn't random. This was strategic, calculated, planned years in advance. On November 10th, I got a call from a detective in Seattle PD. Someone I'd worked with on a cross-jurisdiction case 3 years back. We'd stayed in touch, traded information occasionally on unusual cases. "Daniel, got something weird. Hiker found dead this morning near Mount Rainier foothills. Body's been completely drained of blood. Me says it's animal attack, but the wounds are strange. Thought you might want to know, given your interest in unusual cases." My throat went dry. I opened the journal to November 10th with trembling fingers. November 10th. First test victim, Mount Rainier foothills. "Send me the case details," I said, keeping my voice as steady as possible. "You got it. Why the interest?" "Working on a theory about pattern crimes. Might be connected to something I'm investigating here." The files arrived within an hour. I reviewed them with mounting dread. Male victim, 37 years old, experienced hiker, found 3 miles off the main trail. Massive blood loss, no blood found at the scene. Wounds consistent with... The report didn't say vampire, obviously. It said large predator, species unknown, possibly bear or mountain lion. The journal was right. Again. November 12th. Another hiker dead. Same area, same pattern. Seattle PD issued a public warning about dangerous wildlife in the Mount Rainier area, advised hikers to stay on marked trails and travel in groups. I hung up and stared at the journal lying open on my table. 5 days until Slowick transformed. 5 days until I'd know for certain whether this was all real or whether I'd lost my mind chasing shadows. 5 days to decide what the hell I was going to do about it. I couldn't go to Seattle. No jurisdiction, no authority, no legitimate reason to be anywhere near Michael Slowick. But I could prepare. I could document. I could be ready to act when, if, the transformation happened. I started making lists based on the journal's tactical sections. Equipment needed for vampire hunting. Silver ammunition, thermal imaging for nest detection, UV lighting for perimeter security, protective gear for close combat. The rational part of my brain kept screaming that this was insane. But the detective part, the part that had solved cases by following evidence wherever it led, said I was doing exactly what I should. November 14th. 1 day until Slowick's supposed transformation. I drove to Milwaukee, visited a specialty ammunition supplier I'd heard about through law enforcement channels. The place catered to people with unusual requirements, custom loads, exotic materials, no questions asked about why you needed them. "I need silver core rounds," I told the owner, a grizzled man in his 60s with arms covered in military tattoos. 9mm hollow point. He raised an eyebrow. "Silver's expensive, you know that?" I know. How much for 100 rounds? $3,000. I paid cash from my savings. Walked out with a box of ammunition I desperately hoped I'd never have to use, knowing that hope was probably futile. That night I couldn't sleep. Kept checking my phone, monitoring Seattle news feeds, waiting for something to happen. The Journal said Slowick would transform at 2:17 a.m. Seattle time, which was 4:17 a.m. in Wisconsin. I sat at my kitchen table with the Journal open, watching the clock tick toward the moment of truth. 4 a.m. Nothing on the news feeds. 4:17 a.m. Still nothing. 4:30 a.m. No reports of anything unusual. The sun rose over Green Bay. November 15th arrived unremarkably. I checked every Seattle news source I could find. No reports of screaming from Pine Street, no emergency response to apartment 4B, no indication anything unusual had happened. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe the Journal was elaborate fiction after all. Maybe David Brody had been a delusional killer, and I'd wasted a week preparing for imaginary monsters. I felt equal parts relief and disappointment. Then my phone rang at 9:23 a.m. My Seattle contact. Daniel, something happened last night. Might be nothing, but given your interest in strange cases. Apartment building on Pine Street, 2847 Pine Street specifically. Resident on the 4th floor reported hearing screaming around 2 a.m. Really intense screaming, like someone in extreme pain. But by the time patrol arrived at 2:43, there was nothing. My heart stopped. Nothing? They checked the apartment where the noise came from, 4B. Guy named Michael Slowick. He was gone. Door was unlocked from the inside, signs of major disturbance. Furniture overturned, deep scratches gouged into the walls. And I mean gouged, like someone used metal claws. And blood. Not a lot, but some. Me is analyzing it now. What time did the screaming start, exactly? Neighbors said around 2:15, maybe 2:20. Why does that matter? The Journal said 2:17 a.m. transformation, 2:43 a.m. police arrival. Exact match down to the minute. Listen, I said, trying to keep my voice steady and professional. This is going to sound strange, but you need to consider this might be connected to those hiker deaths. How? Those were animal attacks miles outside the city. I know how it sounds. Just keep the case open as a priority. Monitor for any unusual activity in the area, especially around Discovery Park. And if anyone else goes missing or turns up dead with similar characteristics, call me immediately. Day or night. Long silence on the other end. Then, Daniel, what exactly do you know about this? I don't know anything for certain yet, but I'm following a pattern, and this fits. Just trust me on this. Okay? All right. I'll keep you in the loop. I hung up and looked at the Journal. The next entry was November 18th. First spawn created November 18th. Jennifer Mills, 29. Jogger attacked in Discovery Park. 3 days. I had 3 days to figure out what I was going to do. November 18th, my phone rang at 8:47 a.m. Daniel, you got your hit. 911 call from Discovery Park about 20 minutes ago. Female jogger found unresponsive on the trail. Major trauma. Paramedics transported her to Harborview Medical Center. She's alive but critical. Victim's name? Hang on. Let me check the dispatch log. Jennifer Mills. Age 29. Massive blood loss. Unconscious when they found her. Daniel, what the hell is going on? The Journal had been wrong about one small detail. Mills survived the initial attack, but everything else matched perfectly. Listen to me very carefully, I said. The victim needs to be placed in strict quarantine immediately. Full isolation protocols. Tell the hospital administration it's a potential infectious disease with extreme transmission risk. On what authority? I'll get you the authority within the hour. Just make sure it happens. I hung up and immediately called the FBI field office in Seattle. Asked specifically for Agent Cox, the agent who'd investigated Brody's disappearance in Green Bay. Agent Cox, this is Detective O'Brien from Green Bay PD. Remember the David Brody case? The disappearing suspect? Yeah, still no explanation. Why? Because everything he told me is starting to happen. I need you to listen and not hang up, no matter how insane this sounds. I spent 20 minutes explaining everything. The Journal. The timeline, Slowick's disappearance, the hiker deaths, Mills' attack. Cox was silent. Then, "This sounds like a horror movie." "I know, but Slowick disappeared exactly when predicted. Mills attacked exactly as described. Either this is impossible coincidence, or Brody told the truth. Mills will show transformation signs within 72 hours. We need her quarantined. I'll make calls, but if you're wrong, then I wasted FBI resources on a ghost story. But if I'm right, we're ahead of the biggest threat humanity has faced." November 20th, Cox called back. "Mills is transforming. Bone density increasing, dental changes, cellular structure mutating. We found Slowick, abandoned factory on Harbor Avenue. He wasn't human anymore. Attacked 3 agents. When he died, 2 bodies nearby spontaneously combusted. Burned in seconds. Just ash. Kill the Alpha. The spawn die." "I'm sending you everything," I said. "We need to prepare." Over the next weeks, the timeline unfolded exactly as written. November 25th. Rebecca Penn went missing in Portland. November 28th. 2 of her students disappeared. December 2nd. Vincent Bosch stopped showing for work in San Francisco. December 8th. Angela Ortiz vanished from UCLA Medical Center. I worked with Cox's expanding team, but they focused on containment, not understanding. I saw Brody's warning. Secrecy wouldn't save anyone. I contacted 3 journalists, sent edited journal versions. No time travel, no vampires. Just leaked intelligence about emerging biological threat. 2 published within a week. Headlines about strange deaths, disappearances, government cover-up. Cox was furious. "You're compromising the investigation!" "I'm giving people a chance to survive. Brody's journal is clear. Hiding the truth makes things worse." By mid-December, the task force had eliminated 3 alphas. Each termination proved the journal's accuracy. December 20th, Cox called. "Homeland Security wants you as consultant." I looked around my kitchen. Normal life. That life was over. "I'll make arrangements." I thought about David Brody. 65 when he traveled back, having lost everything. He'd left this journal knowing he might never see if it worked, but he'd done it anyway. I opened the journal to Brody's final entry. "The choice is yours now. The timeline is yours to change. Good luck, detective. Humanity's counting on you." I wrote beneath his words, December 20th, 2025. Slowick eliminated. Pattern confirmed. Timeline accurate. Federal Task Force operational. Preparing for June 2026. Your journal worked, David. We're ready. Humanity hasn't given up yet. Detective Daniel O'Brien. I looked out at Green Bay under December snow. Families unaware of what was coming, but they'd be warned. Prepared. Because one man from a dying future left a warning, and one detective believed him. I didn't know if we'd win, but thanks to David Brody, we'd fight with our eyes open, and that had to count for something.